everyone. I'm Marissa Sokolowski. I'm an OT student at Midwestern University in Glendale. And today I'm going to be showing you my occupational therapy kit. This kit is all about tabletop games that can be used for a wide variety of clients in my future career. The occupation that this kit is geared towards is occupation of play, and the subcategory of participation or exploration. And then also, depending on where the game is being played and who is playing it, it could be a leisure occupation or a social occupation. I'll take the next couple minutes to talk about each game specifically and tell you how they can be graded up or down or adapted in order to meet the just right challenge for our specific clients. The first game I'm going to be talking about as part of my OT kit is Jenga. Jenga can be used with clients who are experiencing problems with their hand movement and wrist movement, especially this pincer grasp that I was talking about. The area of OT where we would use Jenga could be anyone having problems with visual processing or sensory processing, because they really have to analyze and pick out which block they should be moving next in order to not let the tower fall. Also, people who need practice with sequencing and planning, Jenga would be a really good activity for. So maybe someone who has experienced a TBI or something along those lines. A way to grade down the activity of Jenga would be starting with a small stack of blocks instead of a large stack, so it wouldn't be quite as overwhelming for the client. So here we'll just see an example of the game being played. Your turn. Very good. A way to grade up this activity would be making it more of a social activity instead of just play. So in order to grade it up and make it more social, we could add more players as a whole, and then also we could add social questions or cues onto every block. So as the player takes the block, they have to read the question and answer it, and it could get everyone talking more about themselves.
What's your favorite color? Gold.
Very good. Cards can be used as a useful tool for many different populations of clients. Anyone experiencing any visual processing or color discrimination problems could really benefit from using cards, having to distinguish between the black and the red color. Also, anyone experiencing any problems with counting, dyscalculia, or number discrimination, so a client who has experienced a recent TBI or stroke or developmental delays, cards could be very beneficial for them as well. Once again, clients who are having problems with fine motor movements of the hand, so maybe people experiencing arthritis or recent hand surgery or injury, cards could be very useful for them. And then also any children experiencing developmental delays and having a very clumsy bilateral coordination, motor control, and poor manipulation skills, they could really benefit from card games as well. In order to adapt this activity, we can use a number of different assistive devices. This one here is called the card holder, and as you can see, it is actually holding the cards. It would allow the client to hold it with one hand and use its other hand to pick and play with the cards. Another way we could adapt the activity of playing cards is by using two different types of deck of cards. This one, as you can see, is a very old set of cards. It's very flexible, very bendy. I've been playing with it for years, so it's very easy to manipulate and use. On the other hand, we could use a brand new, stiff set of cards, and that would really challenge the client and make them have more control, especially when doing something like shuffling. The next activity I'm going to be using as part of my OT kit is the activity of putting together a puzzle. Once again, clients who we would use this activity with would be anyone experiencing any visual sensational problems, so really visual processing disorder. A simple way to grade up the activity of putting together A puzzle would be to introduce the client to a lot of distractions or a lot of stimulus. So maybe having loud music or other people in the same room while they are at the table trying to put together the puzzle and trying to keep that focus on the puzzle only. A way to grade down the activity would be to have a lot of the pieces set up beforehand and just leave a couple pieces missing, so your client would come and essentially finish the puzzle, but it would just be a lot less overwhelming and a bit easier for them to just do those last couple pieces. A very simple way to adapt the activity of doing a puzzle is to pick a puzzle that has more or less pieces. As you can see, this puzzle has 300, so maybe for a client who is really struggling, a puzzle piece with maybe 25 to 50 or less than 100 would be more appropriate. And then someone who is really enjoying and isn't quite challenged enough by a 300 piece, we can move up to maybe a range closer to 500. The next activity that I'm going to include in my OT kit is the use of dice. There's multiple games that you can play with dice, but for this example, I'm just going to be using them as a counting activity and distinguishing between odd and even numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and have my client roll the dice, and I want you to keep all the even numbers. Very good. A way to grade up this activity would be to increase the number of dice. So instead of having 5, now we're having 10. And we would limit the amount of space that we give our client. So you must keep the dice between this line and this line. Very good. A way to grade down the activity would be to limit the amount of dice and to increase the area we give them. So you must keep the dice upon the table. Very good. We could also, a way to adapt this activity would be using a cup to roll and shake the dice. Because as you can see, the grip on the cup is a lot easier to do than a grip on the singular dice. The next activity I'm going to use as part of my OT kit is the card game of cribbage. Cribbage is a game of counting and strategizing where you use this board to count your points and keep track of your points. So you keep track by putting these very small pegs into the different holes that correlate with whatever score you're at. The people who I would use this activity with, I would mostly stick to anyone that I'm using the biomechanical frame of reference with. So most likely adults with very high cognitive level or their full cognitive function. Adults probably fresh out of a carpal release surgery or any sort of hand injury that is reducing their ability to oppose their thumb or do that pincher movement like we talked about earlier. A way to grade up this activity would just be playing different versions of the game. Maybe there's a version that if one player miscounts their hand and their opponent recognizes it, the opponent gets to steal their points, so the opponent would be moving instead of the original player. And a way to grade down this activity would be to play in teams. So instead of having 2 people playing, you'd have 4, so that would be less movement per each person, and then they'd also have 2 minds to kind of think through things together. A way that I found I could adapt the game of cribbage was by adding a little something to one of the pegs. So as you can see, the pegs originally for use are very slender, very hard to grip. I just took a little bit of tape, wrapped it around the top part of one of these pegs, and as you can see, it still fits in all the holes like it should. It's just a little easier to grasp. And you can use as much tape as you need. You can make this peg much wider. You can make it taller if you know the person's having problems visually finding the peg. You could use bright colors if that's what they're experiencing problems with. So lots of ideas to adapt the game of cribbage. The last activity I'm going to include in my occupational therapy kit is the game of Spot It. So Spot It comes in a little can, and it's a deck of multiple cards that all have pictures on them. The point of the game is to recognize the match between each card, and you have to recognize what you're looking at, find the match between the two cards. So on these cards, for example, the match would be the purple dragons. See the purple dragons? So the client would have to locate the match, which is the purple dragons, and then they would have to say that out loud, and then they would have to take the card on top and add it to their pile and continue on with the next card, finding the next match. So this is a really great activity for, first of all, visual processing, second of all, auditory processing, and then it'd be wonderful for any client who's experiencing problems with apraxia, finding the right word, producing the right word, and just forming that fluent speech. So as you can see, Spot It reaches out to a number of different areas that we would be seeing clients in an OT facility with. Also, the bilateral movement and coordination, having to take a card and put it in your pile, it really just lots of different things that Spot It's touching on. So that concludes all the activities that I want to include in my occupational therapy tabletop game kit. As a recap, we went over Jenga, card games, dice, a jigsaw puzzle, Spot It, and cribbage. So that is all I have for you today, and thank you very much for watching.